Meditating this day on the readings topic of friendship. And maybe you can take a moment just to think about your best friend. Who's your best friend or a group of friends? And what would you say characterizes your friendship? So there are many good friends throughout the Scriptures that we could meditate on and receive some inspiration. I'm going to do a little of that, so travel with me for a minute. Love being the kind of glue and the motive, what propels the friendships in general. But the first is Ruth and Naomi. One of the shortest books in the Old Testament, the book of Ruth. Ruth was a Moabite, and she married the son of Naomi, Naomi being a Hebrew. And Naomi had tragedy in her life. Her husband died, her two sons died. And there she was, alone, widowed, and decided to go back to her people, the Hebrews. Well, Ruth decided something really extraordinary and beautiful. She said, I'm going to go with you. It was a kind of commitment, a kind of loyalty in family. And so she says, where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God, said Ruth to Naomi. It's like, I committed to your son, he died, but I'm still committed to you. A kind of family friendship with loyalty, security. Ruth did go on to remarry Boaz, and they had a son named Obed, who had a son named Jesse, who had a son named King David. And so her loyalty led to a beautiful lineage. The next friendships, Jonathan and David. Now, if there was anyone in the Scriptures who could have been tempted to be jealous, it's Jonathan. Because his father is Saul, who is the king. But David, not the son, is going to be the king. And if you're Jonathan, it's like you're the first in line. You're the heir to the throne. That guy's your competition. But Jonathan didn't live by that. In fact, he and David made a pact, a kind of covenant. And he asked David to remember him if he ever should die, that David would keep God's faithful love to his household. And David did that. Jonathan gave David his armor, his sword, his bow. He built him up with his trust. And so there's a kind of friendship bond that they had in fidelity where jealousy was totally eliminated. Competition, bad competition, eliminated. Tobias and Sarah. Now they're in a part of the Scriptures in the Old Testament, the book that was written in Greek. Most of the Old Testament is written in Hebrew. But there are like 7 books written in Greek, and Tobit's one of them. And Tobias and Sarah came together, and on their wedding night, it was kind of perilous. Why was it perilous? Does anyone know? Why was it very dangerous? This guy's getting nervous right there. Yeah. There was a demon that killed 7 previous husbands of Sarah, got married on their wedding night, 7 of them died in a row. Tobias comes forward. Tobias says, no worries, I'm the man. No, what's going on? He's trusting God. He's trusting God. All these other 7 died. They were very worried he would die too. And so what did they do on their wedding night? They offered incense and they prayed. And here's the prayer. Here's the prayer of Tobias. Blessed are you, God of our ancestors. I now take this kinswoman not because of lust, but for a noble purpose. I take her not for lust, but a noble purpose. And so they would seek God ardently from their hearts and their minds. And in a way, that marriage friendship brought salvation because she could have been cursed by that demon her whole life. But she was liberated. Turning to the New Testament and to Jesus. Do you know Jesus had good friends? There were certain friends he loved a lot. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, those were friends that he would often stay at their house, and he would often celebrate meals with them. He could stop in any time. It was a kind of friendship of providence. They lived in Bethany, which was close to Jerusalem, so whenever he'd come down to go to the Passover, he could stop there and stay there, and he often did. And Martha and Mary, they beautifully treated him. Martha would serve often, and Mary would sit at his feet, and she would gaze upon him in contemplation. But the Scriptures say that Jesus loved them. 3 times in John's Gospel, Lazarus, died, and Jesus raised him from the dead. But here it says, Lord, the one whom you love is ill. Martha talking to Jesus about Lazarus. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, their brother. And one thing that they shared in common, hospitality. Friendship with hospitality. Now today's gospel, and to you and me. How does Jesus treat us as friends? What does it mean to be a friend and a disciple of Jesus? I no longer call you slaves. Slaves are alienated. Slaves are not loved. Slaves are used and abused often. I call you friends. One thing that he says, this is really neat, he shares secrets. He shares secrets with us. He says, I have told you everything I heard from my Father. Have you ever felt Jesus whisper a secret or a truth to you? Teach you some knowledge of the Father? Do you have any secrets with a friend? You trust that friend to keep your secrets? Well, Jesus wants to give us some. And he wants his joy to be in us, and it to be full, and his love to be in us. And he wants us to share in his power, to be co-workers, that you would bear fruit and the fruit would last. That is not often the case with friends, that one could share power with another, but Jesus does that with us. And so today now I'm going to invite you to consider that Jesus is calling you a friend. And that friend bears many gifts, certain duties and expectations, but how much joy comes with being called a friend of Jesus.